Greetings and welcome to another series of weekly devotionals where we take a look at one of the lectionary readings for the upcoming Sunday and offer some thoughts for reflection. And this week we're looking at a passage in the book of Numbers, the third book in the Bible, fourth book in the Bible rather, in the first five books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. The book of Numbers tells a story about the people of Israel. And I think this theme this week, my reflections are all sort of about connectedness and how we're all sort of connected to one another. And I feel that this is sort of lifted up and played out in this passage from the book of Numbers. This past week, we were preparing for the rummage sale here at the church, and we were going through boxes of rummage, and we noticed several boxes from one individual person. And someone in my family remarked that, yeah, this person is sort of addicted to Amazon, and they click and buy. Of course, buying stuff on Amazon is very convenient, and you can get very caught up in buying lots of stuff. And this particular person, I was told, they just want and want and want. And so they click and they buy, and they click and they buy, and they don't have enough room for all the stuff that they have, and henceforth, a lot of their stuff ends up at the church rummage sale. The idea of covetedness, is, of course, in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not covet. And covetedness is sort of framed as the opposite of being neighborly. The Ten Commandments, of course, were written as a framework for living in community with one another. And if one is coveting your neighbor's this or that or something else, generally that does not lead to a spirit of neighborliness. And the people of Israel in this passage from the book of Numbers are coveting, they're wanting, they're desiring something. They're out in the desert wandering around for 40 years, and they're complaining. They don't have enough food, they don't have enough water, they don't have enough comfort, and they complain to Moses over and over again. This story is told also in the book of Exodus. And in the book of Exodus, there's a little bit of a different slant on the story. The people complain, and God is sort of gracious and provides for them what they need, and eventually they learn to trust in God for God's provision. But in the book of Numbers, there's a slightly different take on the story. The people want and want and want, and God does not respond so graciously to their wanton desires. In fact, there are consequences for the people coveting. In this passage in the book of Numbers, as we read, these are verses that are actually outside the lectionary text, but so the people of Israel worked all that day and night, and all the next day gathering quails, food. The least anyone gathered was 10 homers. They gathered a lot of quails. And they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was consumed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So the people called the place Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had craved wantonly. It reminds me, this year's the 50th anniversary of the great movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and my niece had actually performed a show in the Easton Middle School a few years ago, Willy Wonka or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm not sure what it was entitled. But if you remember from that, all the kids covet, they crave the candy, and of course, their desires sort of turn on them. And that's a lesson that God teaches the people in this passage in the book of Numbers. You know, we crave, we covet, we desire wantonly, and there are consequences for that craving, for that coveting. So perhaps a better direction might be, when considering God's blessings in our lives and the surplus or the extra that we have, perhaps we might be moved to share some of those blessings with our neighbors instead of coveting what our neighbors have. Or all our stuff could end up at the church rummage sale. Amen.